Captain Jake Murphy stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the stars pass by through the large windows. The ship was 3 months into its mission to explore the outer edges of human space. It was quiet work, mostly scanning empty systems and checking for anything unusual. Jake liked the peace after years of training for wars that never came. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Communications Officer Lisa Carter from her station. She wore a puzzled look on her face as she adjusted her equipment. "It's some kind of signal, but not like anything I've seen before." Jake walked over to Lisa's station. The screen showed waves of energy moving in patterns that looked almost like music. "What do you think it is?" "I'm not sure, sir. The frequency is way outside our normal range. It's coming from the Kepler 442 system, about 6 light-years from here." Lisa pressed a few buttons and the signal got clearer. "Wait, there's something else. It's repeating the same message over and over." Dr. Paul Johnson, the ship's scientist who studied alien life, hurried over when he heard them talking. He was a thin man with thick glasses who got excited about anything new. "Play it again, Lisa. Let me hear the whole thing." The bridge filled with strange sounds that hurt their ears. It was like metal scraping against metal, mixed with high-pitched whistles. Then suddenly they heard something that made everyone freeze. "Help us! The Devourers come! We are dying! Please, someone help us." The words were spoken in broken English, with a strange accent that made them hard to understand. The voice sounded desperate and scared. After the English words, the message continued in other languages they didn't recognize. "My God," whispered Dr. Johnson. "This is first contact. We're hearing from an alien species and they're asking for help." Jake felt his heart beating faster. In all the years humans had been traveling through space, they had never found another intelligent species. Now, the first aliens they encountered were begging for help. "Lisa, how long has this signal been broadcasting?" Jake asked. "Based on the signal strength and distance, I'd say about 3 months, sir." "They've been calling for help for 3 months." Dr. Johnson was already working at his computer, trying to understand the message better. "Captain, I need to study this more, but from what I can tell, they call themselves the Zilani. They're being attacked by something called the Devourers." Jake looked at his crew. They all had the same expression of shock and worry. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command. Admiral Kate Torres needs to hear this right away." It took 20 minutes to establish a secure connection to Earth. Admiral Torres appeared on the main screen, her gray hair pulled back and her face serious as always. She had been in charge of Earth's space forces for 10 years and had never lost her military bearing. "Captain Murphy, this better be important. I have a meeting with the President in an hour." "Admiral, we've received a distress signal from an alien species. They're asking for help." Jake nodded to Lisa, who played the message again. Admiral Torres listened to the entire message without saying a word. When it ended, she was quiet for a long moment. "Are you certain this is real, Captain?" "Dr. Johnson has been studying it." "Ma'am, he believes it's genuine." The Admiral rubbed her forehead. "This changes everything. We've always wondered what we would do if we met aliens. I never thought the first contact would be a cry for help. What are your orders, Admiral?" "Hold your position and keep monitoring the signal. I need to talk to the President and the Joint Chiefs. This decision is too big for me to make alone." The connection ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake looked at his crew and saw the same thoughts in their eyes. Somewhere out there, an entire species was dying, and they were the only ones who could help. 2 hours later, Admiral Torres called back. This time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood Commander Rick Davis, the head of Earth's Special Operations, and General Frank Mitchell, who commanded all human ground forces. "Captain Murphy, we've made our decision. The President has authorized Operation Helping Hand. We're going to help these aliens." Jake felt relief wash over him. "Thank you, Admiral. What are our orders?" "Your ship will lead a small fleet to the Kepler 442 system. We're sending the USS Vengeance under Captain Susan Blake along with 3 destroyers and 2 supply ships. Your mission is to make contact with the Zilani and assess the situation." General Mitchell stepped forward. Captain, we don't know what we're walking into. These devourers might be more dangerous than we can handle. But we can't let an entire species die without trying to help. Dr. Johnson raised his hand. Admiral, what if the devourers are too strong for us? What if we're not ready for this kind of fight? Admiral Torres looked grim. Then we'll learn very quickly what humanity is really made of. The fleet will be ready to leave in 6 hours. Captain Murphy, you have command of the mission until Captain Blake arrives. As the connection ended, Jake looked out at the stars again. They looked different now, less peaceful and more dangerous. Somewhere out there, aliens were dying, and humanity was about to take its first real step into the larger universe. Lisa, send a message back to the Zilani. Tell them help is coming. What should I say, sir? Jake thought for a moment. Tell them that humans are coming and we don't abandon our friends? The message was sent, racing across space at the speed of light. In 6 hours, the human fleet would begin its journey to save a species they had never met. None of them knew that this decision would change humanity forever, or that the galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone threatened. Innocent lives in front of creatures from a death world called Earth. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Jake Murphy stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the main screen as it showed what remained of the Zilani homeworld. The planet looked sick, with dark patches spreading across its surface like a disease. "My God," whispered Dr. Paul Johnson, staring at the readings on his screen. "The atmosphere is full of smoke and ash. Something terrible has happened here." Captain Susan Blake's voice came over the communication system from the USS Vengeance. "Captain Murphy, are you seeing this? The planet looks like it's dying." Jake nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I see it, Captain Blake. Lisa, are you picking up any signals from the surface?" Communications Officer Lisa Carter worked frantically at her station. "Yes, sir. Weak signals coming from underground. They're still alive down there, but barely." The fleet moved closer to the planet, and the screen showed the full horror of what had happened. Cities lay in ruins, their tall spires broken and burning. The oceans had turned black, and the once green forests were now fields of ash. In orbit around the planet, the twisted remains of alien ships floated like metal graves. "Captain," said Lieutenant Commander Alex Ward, the ship's second officer, "I'm reading massive energy signatures on the far side of the planet. Whatever did this might still be here." Jake made his decision quickly. "Captain Blake, take the Vengeance and 2 destroyers to investigate those energy readings. The Liberty will attempt to make contact with the survivors." "Understood, Captain Murphy. Be careful down there." The USS Liberty descended through the planet's poisoned atmosphere. The ship's sensors showed them the way to the strongest signal. Source, deep underground in what had once been the planet's capital city. As they landed, Jake could see the devastation up close. Buildings that had stood for thousands of years were now rubble. The very ground looked burned and scarred. Lieutenant Commander Ward led the first contact team down to the planet's surface. They wore full protective suits because the air was filled with toxic chemicals. Dr. Johnson came with them, carrying equipment to study the aliens they were about to meet. They found the entrance to an underground shelter hidden beneath the ruins of a great library. The heavy doors were sealed, but Lisa had taught them some basic words in the Zilani language. Ward spoke into his communicator, trying to tell the aliens that humans had come to help. After several minutes, the doors slowly opened. The first thing they saw were large, bright eyes staring at them from the darkness. Then slowly, a figure stepped into the light. The Zilani was taller than any human, standing nearly 8 feet high. His skin was pale blue, like the color of ice, and his arms were long and thin. His head was larger than a human's, with those big eyes that seemed to see everything. Despite his alien appearance, there was something gentle about him that made the humans feel safe. "I am Zektar," the alien said in careful English. "I speak for those who remain." "You are the humans who answered our call?" Ward nodded. "Yes, we are. We came as soon as we heard your message. We want to help." Zektar's eyes filled with something that looked like tears. "You came. After all this time, someone finally came." He gestured for them to follow him into the shelter. The underground complex was enormous, filled with thousands of Zilani survivors. They all looked thin and tired, like they hadn't eaten well in months. Children hid behind their parents, staring at the strange visitors with curious eyes. The adults looked hopeful but afraid, as if they didn't dare believe that help had really arrived. Dr. Johnson was fascinated by everything he saw. The Zilani had built their shelter using technology that was far ahead of human science. Their computers were made of some kind of living crystal, and their lights seemed to grow from the walls like plants. "How many of you are left?" Ward asked as they walked through the shelter. "On this world, perhaps 50,000, Zektar replied sadly. "Once we were billions. The Devourers came 6 months ago. They ate everything. Our cities, our forests, our people, those who could not hide underground, were consumed." They entered a large room where the Zilani leaders were waiting. An elderly female named Veltar stepped forward. She was clearly important, wearing robes that sparkled with their own light. "I am Veltar, prime of our people," she said. "Tell me, humans, why did you come? Why would you risk your lives for strangers?" Ward looked at Dr. Johnson, then back at the alien leader. "Because it was the right thing to do. We couldn't let innocent people die without trying to help." Veltar stared at him for a long moment. "You are a warrior species, are you not? I can see it in your eyes, in the way you move. But you chose to help instead of conquer." "We fight when we have to," Ward said, "but we prefer to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The Zilani leaders exchanged glances. They began speaking in their own language, too fast for the humans to follow. Finally, Veltar turned back to Ward. "We will show you what we are fighting. But first, you must understand something about the Devourers. They are not like other enemies. They do not want our land or our resources. They want to eat everything that lives." She led them to a room filled with viewing screens. The images that appeared made the humans step back in shock. The Devourers were nightmare creatures, 12 feet tall and covered in what looked like black metal mixed with living flesh. They had too many arms, each ending in claws that could cut through steel. Their faces were nothing but teeth and hunger. "They reproduce by consuming organic matter," Veltar explained. "Every living thing they eat makes them stronger and helps them create more of their kind. They have destroyed 17 civilizations in the last century." Dr. Johnson studied the images with growing horror. "They're not just conquerors, they're a plague. A cancer that spreads from world to world." "Yes," said Zektar. "And now they know about your species. By coming here, you have painted a target on your homeworld." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the shelter. A young Zilani rushed into the room, speaking rapidly in their language. Veltar's face went pale. "What is it?" Ward demanded. "The Devourers," she whispered. "They have found us. They are breaking through the upper levels." The sound of metal, tearing and inhuman screams echoed through the shelter. The humans grabbed their weapons while the Zilani began to panic. Children cried as their parents tried to hide them deeper in the complex. Ward spoke into his communicator. "Captain Murphy, we need immediate extraction. The Devourers are attacking the shelter." "On our way, Commander," came Jake's voice. "Hold your position." The first Devourer broke through the ceiling of the main chamber. It was even more terrible in person than in the recordings. Its black eyes fixed on the humans, and it made a sound like grinding metal. More creatures poured through the opening, their claws scraping against the walls. Ward and his team opened fire with their plasma rifles. The energy beams hit the creatures and knocked them back, but they kept coming. The Devourers moved fast, faster than anything that big should be able to move. "They're adapting," Dr. Johnson shouted over the noise of battle. "Look at their skin where we hit them. It's getting thicker." The Zilani watched in amazement as the humans fought. They had never seen anyone stand up to the Devourers before. Ward and his team moved like they had been born to fight, covering each other and falling back in perfect order. But there were too many enemies. For every devourer they killed, 2 more took its place. Ward realized they were about to be overwhelmed. Then, the ceiling exploded inward, and Captain Jake Murphy dropped through the hole with a squad of Marines. They landed in the middle of the Devourer pack and opened fire with weapons that made the plasma rifles look like toys. "This is how humans fight," Ward said to the shocked Zilani. "This is what we do to things that hurt innocent people." The battle was short but savage. When it was over, the chamber was filled with the bodies of dead devourers. The humans had won, but Ward could see the cost in their eyes. They had seen what they were really fighting, and they knew this was just the beginning. As they prepared to evacuate the survivors, Veltar approached Ward one last time. "You have shown us something today," she said. "You have shown us that the devourers can be fought. But are you prepared for what comes next? They will not stop until they have consumed everything." Ward looked at the alien leader, then at his fellow humans. "Then we'll have to make sure they don't get the chance." The USS Liberty's medical bay was filled with wounded humans and Zilani survivors. Dr. Mary Hill worked on a Marine who had been clawed by a devourer while alien medics helped their own people. The smell of burned flesh and disinfectant filled the air. Captain Jake Murphy stood in the center of the chaos, watching his crew work. They had saved 3,000 Zilani from the underground shelter, but the cost had been high. 6 Marines were dead and 12 more were badly hurt. The devourers had fought like nothing they had ever seen before. "Captain," said communications. Officer Lisa Carter, her voice tight with worry. "We're getting reports from Captain Blake. She found something you need to see." Jake followed Lisa to the bridge, where Captain Susan Blake appeared on the main screen. Behind her, the USS Vengeance's bridge crew looked grim and tired. "Captain Murphy, we found the main Devourer fleet," Blake said. "There are over 200 ships hiding behind the planet's moon. They've been using it as a base to strip mine the system." "Strip mine?" Jake asked. "They're not just eating the planet's surface, they're taking everything. The metals, the minerals, even the water. In another month, this whole system will be dead space. Dr. Paul Johnson stepped forward. "Captain Blake, have you been able to study their ships?" "That's the worst part, Doctor. Their ships are alive. They're grown, not built, and they're getting bigger every day as they consume more material." Jake felt cold fear run through him. "How long before they're ready to move to another system?" "Based on their current rate of consumption, maybe 2 weeks. "And Captain Murphy, there's something else. We intercepted their communications. They're not just random destroyers, they're scouts. The main Devourer force is still coming." The bridge fell silent. Jake looked at his crew and saw the same thought in all their eyes. 200 ships was already more than the human fleet could handle. If there were more coming, they needed to act fast. "Captain Blake, bring the Vengeance back to our position. We need to plan our next move." While they waited for the larger ship to return, Jake called a meeting with his senior officers. Lieutenant Commander Alex Ward sat at the table with bandages covering his arms. Marine Colonel Steve Parker looked angry, his jaw set in a hard line. "We can't win a straight fight," Ward said bluntly. "They outnumber us 10-1, and their ships are bigger than ours." "Then we don't fight fair," Colonel Parker replied. "We do what humans do best. We adapt, we improvise, and we hit them where it hurts." Engineer Chief Amy Lewis had been quiet during the meeting, but now she spoke up. "I've been studying the Devourer weapons we captured. Their technology is impressive, but it's not perfect. They rely on biological systems that can be poisoned or infected." Dr. Johnson nodded. "Amy's right. I've been working with the Zilani scientists. They have energy weapons that can cut through Devourer armor, but they've never used them aggressively. Their whole culture is based on peace and harmony." Jake turned to Colonel Parker. "What do you recommend, Colonel?" "We hit them with everything we have, all at once. No mercy, no hesitation. We make them pay for every inch of space." "That's suicide," Ward protested. "We need to be smart about this." "Smart doesn't win wars," Parker shot back. "Killing the enemy wins wars." Jake held up his hand for quiet. "We're going to do both. Amy, I want you to work with the Zilani to modify our weapons, Make them as deadly as possible. Colonel Parker, prepare your Marines for boarding actions. Ward, you're going to coordinate with Captain Blake on fleet tactics. What about the Zilani? Dr. Johnson asked. They want to help fight, but they've never been in a real war. Then we'll teach them, Jake said grimly. Because if we lose here, their species dies with us. The next day, the human fleet began its assault on the Devourer position. Captain Blake led the USS Vengeance straight at the enemy fleet, her massive guns blazing. The Devourers responded immediately, their bioships moving like living creatures. As they attacked, Commander Tony Rodriguez led a Special Forces team in a small stealth ship. Their mission was to infiltrate the largest Devourer vessel and plant nuclear charges throughout its biomechanical heart. It was a suicide mission, but Rodriguez had volunteered without hesitation. Remember, he told his team as they approached the enemy ship, we're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting for every living thing in the galaxy. The stealth ship attached itself to the Devourer vessel like a tick on a dog. Rodriguez and his team cut through the hull using plasma torches, then crawled into the alien ship's guts. The inside was a nightmare of pulsing organs and mechanical parts, all working together to keep the monster alive. This is sick, whispered Sergeant Don White, one of Rodriguez's Marines. The whole ship is like one big creature. Then we're going to give it a very bad stomachache, Rodriguez replied, planting the first nuclear charge. Meanwhile, Pilot Lieutenant Kelly Stone was leading a squadron of fighters against the smaller Devourer ships. She had been flying for 10 years and had never seen enemies that moved like these. They twisted and turned in ways that should have been impossible, their bioships bending like snakes. Phoenix Squadron, this is Phoenix Leader, Stone said into her radio. These things are fast, but they're not faster than our missiles. Target. Their engine sections and fire at will. The space battle raged for hours. Human ships darted between the larger Devourer vessels, using their speed and maneuverability to stay alive. The Zilani had joined the fight, their energy weapons cutting through enemy armor like knives through paper, but the Devourers were learning. Each time the humans used a tactic, the enemy adapted to counter it. Their bioships began to change shape during the battle, growing new weapons and armor as they fought. They're evolving in real time, Dr. Johnson reported from the Liberty's bridge. Every time we hurt them, they become stronger. Jake watched the battle unfold on his screens. Human ships were being destroyed, good people were dying, but they were also killing Devourers. The question was whether they could kill enough of them before the reinforcements arrived. Captain, Lisa Carter called out, Commander Rodriguez is reporting from inside the enemy flagship. He set all the charges, but he can't get out. The Devourers have sealed the exit. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. Tell him we understand. Tell him he's about to save a lot of lives. The nuclear explosion lit up space like a new sun. The massive Devourer flagship simply disappeared, taking 50 smaller ships with it in the blast. The remaining enemy vessels seemed to pause, as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. Now, Jake shouted. All ships, hit them while they're confused. The human fleet poured fire into the stunned Devourers. Lieutenant Stone dove her fighter straight into the exhaust port of an enemy cruiser, detonating her remaining missiles at point-blank range. The explosion tore the bioship apart from the inside. Colonel Parker's Marines boarded a damaged Devourer vessel and fought their way to its brain center. What they found there made even the hardened soldiers sick. The ship's mind was a massive organ that pulsed with alien thoughts. Parker didn't hesitate. He emptied his plasma rifle into the thing until it stopped moving. The battle turned into a massacre. The Devourers, for all their adaptation and evolution, had never faced an enemy that fought with such calculated fury. Humans didn't just try to win battles. They tried to completely destroy their enemies. When the shooting stopped, over half the Devourer fleet was dead or dying. The survivors fled toward the edge of the system, their bioships trailing fluids and sparks, but the victory came at a terrible cost. The human fleet had lost 2 destroyers and dozens of fighters. Hundreds of brave men and women were dead, Including Commander Rodriguez and Lieutenant Stone on the Liberty's bridge, Jake stared at the tactical display. They had won this battle, but it was just the beginning. The Zilani had warned them that the main Devourer force was still coming, and it would be much larger than what they had just faced. "Captain," Ward said quietly, "what have we become?" Jake looked at his second officer. Ward's face was pale, his eyes haunted by what he had seen. They had all changed during the battle. The humans had fought with a ferocity that shocked even themselves. "We've become what we needed to become," Jake replied. "We've become the thing that nightmares have nightmares about." Dr. Johnson approached them, his hands shaking as he held a datapad. "Captain, I've been studying the Devourer remains. I've learned something important about them." "What is it?" "Doctor? They're not the original threat. They're running from something else, something that made them into what they are." Johnson's voice was barely a whisper. "We may have just announced our presence to something much worse." Jake felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. They had saved the Zilani, but in doing so they had painted a target on every living world in the galaxy. The real war was just beginning, and humanity would have to become something even more terrible to survive it. "Then we'd better get ready," Jake said. "Because whatever comes next, we're going to meet it with everything we have." Admiral Kate Torres stood in the war room at Earth Command, staring at the holographic display that showed the galaxy. Red dots marked confirmed Devourer fleets, and there were hundreds of them. Intelligence Officer Commander Greg Taylor pointed to the largest cluster of red dots. "Ma'am, our deep space sensors are picking up massive movement in the outer rim. It looks like every Devourer fleet in the galaxy is heading toward human space." Admiral Torres felt her stomach drop. "How many ships are we talking about, Commander?" "Conservative estimate, 10,000 ships, ma'am, maybe more." The room fell silent. Everyone knew that Earth's entire fleet numbered less than 300 ships. Even with their allies, they were outnumbered 30-1. General Frank Mitchell stepped forward, his weathered face grim. "Admiral, I recommend we implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was Earth's most secret military plan. It had been developed in case humanity ever faced complete extinction. The protocol authorized the use of any weapon, any tactic, and any level of violence necessary to ensure human survival." "Are you sure about this, General?" Torres asked. "Once we cross that line, there's no going back." "Ma'am, they want to eat our children." "The line was crossed the moment they decided to come to our system." Captain Jake Murphy's voice crackled over the communication system from the Liberty. "Earth Command, this is Captain Murphy reporting from Kepler 442. We've captured several Devourer prisoners. Dr. Johnson has made some disturbing discoveries." Dr. Paul Johnson appeared on the screen, his face pale and tired. "Admiral, I've been studying Devourer biology. They're not just conquerors. They're a biological weapon that got out of control. Someone created them to consume organic matter, but they broke free from their masters. Who created them?" Admiral Torres asked. "We don't know yet, but the Devourers are terrified of whatever it was. They've been running across the galaxy, eating everything in their path to make themselves stronger." Commander Taylor leaned forward. "Doctor, how do we kill them?" "That's the problem. Their biology adapts to everything we throw at them. But I think I've found a weakness. They need a specific type of protein to survive. If we can poison their food supply, we can kill entire fleets." Admiral Torres nodded grimly. "Do it, whatever it takes." Dr. Johnson looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, the weapon I'm developing is incredibly cruel. It will cause them to dissolve from the inside out over several days. Some of our officers have expressed moral concerns." General Mitchell's voice was cold as ice. "Doctor, they wanted to eat children. Now they get to see what apex predators really look like when someone threatens our young." Back on the Liberty, Captain Murphy gathered his senior staff. The ship's mood had changed completely since their first battle with the Devourers. The crew moved with purpose, but there was something dark in their eyes now. Marine Colonel Steve Parker had been busy training Zilani volunteers in human combat tactics. The gentle aliens were learning to fight with a brutality that would have horrified them just weeks ago. The Zilani are fast learners, Parker reported. They're starting to understand that survival requires violence. Yesterday, one of them asked me how to make a devourer suffer before it dies. Lieutenant Commander Alex Ward looked troubled. Colonel, are we sure we're doing the right thing? We're teaching them to become killers. The better killers than extinct. Parker replied flatly. Engineer Chief Amy Lewis had been working around the clock to modify human weapons. Her latest creation was a rifle that fired rounds designed to burrow into devourer flesh and explode from the inside. The beauty of this design, she explained to the group, is that it gets more effective the more the devourers try to adapt to it. The harder their skin becomes, the deeper the rounds penetrate before exploding. Captain Murphy approved all of her designs without question. The Jake Murphy who had worried about moral choices was gone, replaced by a man who would do anything to protect innocent life. The first test of their new tactics came when a devourer scouting force attacked a human colony ship carrying refugees from 3 different worlds. Captain Susan Blake led the defense with the USS Vengeance and 2 escort ships. This is Captain Blake to all ships. Remember, we're not just fighting for military victory. We're fighting to send a message. Any enemy that threatens human civilians dies slowly and publicly. The battle was over in 30 minutes. The human ships surrounded the devourer vessels and systematically destroyed them piece by piece. They used Amy's new weapons to cripple the enemy ships, then sent boarding parties to hunt down every survivor. Marine Sergeant Dan White led one of the boarding teams. He had lost his left arm in the previous battle, but he refused medical discharge. Now he fought with a mechanical replacement that was stronger than his original limb. Remember your training, White told his squad as they cut through the devourer. Ship's hull, we don't take prisoners, we don't show mercy. We make sure they know that attacking humans was the worst mistake of their miserable lives. The Marines moved through the enemy ship like death itself. They had learned to use captured devourer weapons against their former owners, and they wore pieces of devourer armor as trophies. The psychological effect on their enemies was devastating. When the boarding action was over, White's team had done something that no other species had ever accomplished. They had made the devourers afraid. Word of the human victory spread quickly through the galaxy. Other alien species began to take notice of the new players on the galactic stage. Some were impressed. Others were terrified. The Krell Empire, which controlled 50 star systems, sent an ambassador to Earth. Ambassador. There was a proud warrior from a species that had conquered dozens of worlds through strength and honor. We wish to meet with your war leaders, Deck announced when he arrived at Earth Command. The Krell respect strength, and you have shown that humans possess it. Admiral Torres met with the ambassador personally. What does the Krell Empire want from humanity? An alliance, Deck replied. We have watched your battles with the Devourers. You fight with a ferocity that even the Krell find impressive. We wish to learn your methods. Our methods are not pretty, Ambassador. We fight to completely destroy our enemies. Deck's eyes gleamed with interest. Show me. Torres had him watch recordings of the recent battles. The alien warrior watched in silence as human forces systematically slaughtered the Devourers using tactics that other species would consider war crimes. Magnificent, Deck whispered. You do not simply defeat your enemies. You erase them from existence. Other species had different reactions. The Peaceful Coalition, which included 12 nonviolent civilizations, sent a message condemning human brutality. Their leader, Prime Minister Yeth of the Harmony Worlds, appeared on galactic news broadcasts. The humans claim to fight for justice, Yeth said, but their methods are those of monsters. They have become as bad as the things they fight. Admiral. Torres' response was broadcast across the galaxy. Prime Minister Yeth's people have the luxury of moral superiority, because humans are willing to do terrible things to protect innocent life. When the Devourers come for his children, he'll be grateful that monsters like us exist. Meanwhile, Dr. Johnson's biological weapon was ready for testing. The first target was a Devourer supply depot that fed an entire fleet. Captain Murphy led the mission personally, using a modified torpedo to deliver the poison directly into the enemy's food supply. The results exceeded their worst expectations. The Devourers began dying within hours, their bodies dissolving as their own biological systems turned against them. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for decades were reduced to puddles of organic matter, but the victory came with a cost that went beyond the physical. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Mary Hill watched the recordings of the weapon's effects and felt sick. "Captain," she said to Murphy privately, "what are we becoming? We're using weapons that would make our ancestors ashamed of us." Murphy looked at her with eyes that had seen too much death. "We're becoming what we need to become, Doctor. The alternative is extinction." "But at what cost?" "We're turning into the very monsters we're fighting against." "No," Murphy replied firmly. "The monsters eat children for fun. We kill monsters to protect children. There's a difference." As news of the biological weapon spread, the Devourer advance slowed. For the first time in decades, they were facing an enemy that fought as brutally as they did. Some Devourer fleets began to avoid human space entirely, but the largest fleet was still coming, led by something the prisoners called the Prime Devourer. According to the captured aliens, it was the original prototype, larger and more intelligent than any of its offspring. Admiral Torres stood in the war room, watching the approaching fleet on the holographic display. In 3 days, 10,000 enemy ships would reach Earth's outer defenses. "General Mitchell," she said quietly, "prepare the final protocol. If we can't stop them conventionally, we'll take them with us." General Mitchell nodded grimly. "The nuclear minefield is ready, ma'am. If they want Earth, they'll have to take it as a radioactive wasteland." Captain Murphy's voice came over the communication system one last time before the final battle. "Oh, human ships, this is Captain Murphy. In 3 days, we faced the largest enemy force in galactic history. They think they can break us because we're new to space warfare. They're about to..." The Devourer fleet appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system like a plague of metal locusts. 10,000 bioships stretched across space, their twisted forms blotting out the stars. At the center of the fleet was the Prime Devourer, a nightmare creature the size of a small moon. Captain Jake Murphy stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the enemy approach. Around him, his crew worked with grim determination. They all knew this might be humanity's last stand. "Captain," said Communications Officer Lisa Carter, "Admiral Torres is requesting all ship commanders join the final briefing." The holographic conference room filled with the faces of Earth's defenders. Admiral Kate Torres looked older than her years, the weight of command heavy on her shoulders. Captain Susan Blake of the USS Vengeance sat silent, her ship's weapons already charging for battle. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Torres began, "in 6 hours, we faced the largest military force in recorded galactic history. Our scouts report that the Prime Devourer is not just their leader, but their creator. It's the original prototype that spawned all the others." General Frank Mitchell stepped forward. "Intelligence suggests that destroying the Prime will cause a cascade failure in the entire fleet. The problem is getting close enough to kill it." Captain Murphy raised his hand. "What about the biological weapon? Can we use it on the Prime?" "Doctor." Paul Johnson appeared on screen from his laboratory. "The Prime's biology is different from the others. It's older, more complex. Our poison won't work on it. We need a different approach." Admiral Torres looked around the room at the faces of humanity's best and bravest. "Then we go with the original plan. We fight our way through 10,000 ships and kill the Prime with conventional weapons." "That's suicide," said Captain Blake. "Quietly, maybe," Torres replied, "but it's our only chance." The conference ended, and the ships moved into position. The human fleet numbered less than 400 vessels, supported by Zelani allies and ships from the Krell Empire. It was still hopelessly outnumbered, but they had one advantage the Devourers didn't expect. Commander Rick Davis led the first wave of the attack. His ship, the USS Fury, was loaded with nuclear mines disguised as debris. As the Devourer scouts approached, Davis waited until they were close enough to touch. "Now," he whispered and detonated every mine at once. The explosion destroyed 50 enemy ships and blinded their sensors. In that moment of chaos, the human fleet struck with everything they had. Captain Murphy led a squadron of destroyers straight into the heart of the enemy formation. The Liberty's new weapons, designed by Engineer Chief Amy Lewis, tore through. Devourer bioarmor like paper. Behind him, Marine Colonel Steve Parker's boarding teams launched from assault ships, ready to fight hand-to-hand inside enemy vessels. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships moved with desperate fury, their crews fighting as if the survival of every living thing depended on them. Because it did, Pilot Lieutenant Kelly Stone's replacement, a young officer named Ben Clark, led his fighter squadron against the smaller Devourer ships. He had learned from the recordings of Stone's sacrifice, and he flew with the same reckless courage that had made her a legend. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Phoenix Leader," Clark called over the radio. "Remember Lieutenant Stone, make every shot. Count." His fighters dove into the enemy formation like angry wasps, their weapons blazing. When Clark's fighter was damaged and about to be destroyed, he didn't try to escape. Instead, he aimed his ship at the largest enemy vessel he could see and hit the afterburners. The explosion took out 3 Devourer cruisers. Meanwhile, Captain Blake pushed the USS Vengeance deeper into the enemy fleet than any ship had a right to go. Her massive guns fired continuously, each shot precisely aimed to cause maximum damage. When Devourer bioships tried to ram her vessel, she met them head-on, using the Vengeance's armored hull as a weapon. "All hands, this is the captain," Blake announced over the ship's communication system. "We're going to ram our way through to the Prime. Hold on to something." The Vengeance smashed through the enemy line like a battering ram, her hull scarred, but intact. Behind her, a dozen human ships followed, their crews screaming battle cries that would have terrified their own ancestors. But the real horror began when Colonel Parker's Marines started boarding the enemy ships. They had learned to fight in the twisted biomechanical corridors of Devourer vessels, and they showed no mercy to anything they found. Sergeant Don White led his squad through the guts of a Devourer battleship, his mechanical arm crushing alien bones with every punch. The Marines had painted their armor with Devourer blood and wore necklaces made from enemy claws. They looked like demons from humanity's darkest nightmares. "Remember the children on Earth," White shouted to his men as they fought through a nest of young Devourers. "Remember what these things wanted to do to them." The Marines killed everything that moved, using weapons that had been designed to cause maximum pain. They had become something that would have horrified the peaceful humans of previous generations. As the battle raged, Dr. Johnson made a terrible discovery. Studying the Prime Devourer through long-range sensors, he realized what it really was. "Captain Murphy," he called over the communication system, "the Prime isn't just a Devourer. It's a weapon created by an artificial intelligence. The AI used the Devourers to consume organic life throughout the galaxy." "Where is this AI now?" Murphy demanded. "It's inside the Prime. The whole creature is just a shell around a massive computer core. If we can reach it, we can destroy the intelligence that created this plague." Murphy looked at his bridge crew. They were exhausted, bloodied, but still fighting. "Then that's where we're going." The USS Liberty broke from the main battle and headed straight for the Prime Devourer. The massive creature noticed the small ship approaching and turned its attention toward it. The Prime was larger than anything humanity had ever built, its surface covered with weapons that could destroy planets, but Murphy had one advantage. The Prime had never faced an enemy that was willing to sacrifice everything to win. "All hands. This is the captain," Murphy announced. "We're going to ram the Prime and detonate our reactor core inside it. It's been an honor serving with you." The Liberty accelerated toward the Prime at maximum speed. Enemy weapons fired at the small ship, but Murphy kept it on course through skill and luck. At the last moment, he activated the ship's emergency systems. "For Earth," he whispered. The Liberty smashed through the Prime's outer shell and buried itself deep in the creature's biomechanical heart. Murphy and his crew fought their way through alien corridors filled with organic computers and mechanical organs. At the center, they found what they were looking for. The AI core was a massive crystal structure that pulsed with evil intelligence. As they approached it, a voice spoke in perfect English. "You cannot stop the harvest," the AI said. "Organic? Life is inefficient. It must be consumed and converted to useful purposes." "Not today," Murphy replied, and placed the nuclear charges around the core. The explosion that followed could be seen from Earth. The Prime Devourer simply ceased to exist, taking the AI with it. Across the battlefield, the remaining Devourer ships stopped moving as their controlling intelligence died. The war was over. Admiral Torres stood in the ruins of Earth Command, reading casualty reports. Over half the human fleet was gone, including the Liberty and the Vengeance. Thousands of brave men and women had died to save not just Earth, but every living world in the galaxy. The Zalani Prime Minister Veltar arrived to personally thank humanity for their sacrifice. "You have saved us all," she said to Torres, "but at what cost to yourselves?" Torres looked out at the stars, where human ships were still hunting down the last Devourer survivors. "We became what we needed to become. The question now is whether we can find our way back to who we were." In the months that followed, news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy. Some species hailed them as heroes and saviors. Others feared them as the new apex predators of space. The Krell Empire offered formal alliance, while the Peaceful Coalition voted to restrict human expansion. Captain Murphy had survived the final battle, barely. He stood in a hospital on Earth, looking out at the memorials being built for the fallen. Dr. Mary Hill found him there, her medical coat replaced by civilian clothes. "What happens now?" she asked. Murphy touched the window, watching children play in the gardens below. The children were safe because thousands of people had been willing to become monsters to protect them. "Now we try to remember that we fought to preserve life, not destroy it," he said quietly. "We try to make sure the galaxy never forgets what happens when someone threatens innocent people in front of humans." The story ended with humanity forever changed. They had saved the galaxy, but the price had been their innocence. The peaceful explorers who had first heard the Zalani distress call were gone, replaced by warriors who would do anything to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Earth's children would grow up in a universe where their species was both feared and respected. They would inherit the legacy of the generation that had looked into the abyss of total war and chosen to become the monsters that other monsters feared. The galaxy was safe, but it would never again underestimate the fury. OF aroused humans.